three courses that we offer. They're called Transforming the Heart, Relating from the Heart, and Living from the Heart. And they track, there's three main ways that God engages you to change you. Directly in your relationship with Him, through people, and through circumstances. So each of those courses deals with your direct relationship with God is the first one, your relationship with people, and then your relationship with circumstances in the world. And what we're trying to do is, I've had the privilege of working with a number of senior leaders who have blown up their lives or plateaued or just not fulfilled their destinies. And my observation in that is usually one or more of those three channels is blocked. And if God can't get your attention, then you can't change. And if you can't change, then you end up doing things that destroy your life's work. So I want to build people whose lives are open in all three of those areas. So to get a little more specific about the workshops, each one of them starts with a 90-minute God encounter we call a Taste of Heaven, where we take you to heaven, and we have actors and staging and lighting and original music and all kinds of creative stuff, but it's just a powerful experience for people. And then we take that experience and unpack that and use that to understand how the heart works and get to the stuff that's down deep inside of us. And our workshops we do a lot of learning games, you go through the whole workshop in a team of 4, and then you meet with that team of 4 for 12 weeks afterward. So some of those teams are still meeting long after the training because the relationships were so valuable to them. But we do a lot of hands-on interactive stuff. Just to give you one other little piece about our workshops is I don't allow people to pray for each other in our workshops. And the reason is we're going to learn to let Jesus do all the ministry. So I don't do any ministry in these workshops, and I don't allow other people to do it, but there are amazing breakthroughs when people start asking Jesus their questions and he starts talking to them. So it's a lot of fun. So let me shut the door here and we'll get started. I think there's one more question down there. See, as a coach, you don't get to pontificate that often, so it's kind of fun when you do. The cards and stuff, I use them when I'm in person. This is Pamela's question, and they're really helpful. They're also really helpful in group settings. Like if you're in a small group and you want to get people talking about their desires, the cards include a little booklet with 10 different games that you can do with them, and some of them are light and some of them are serious, but they're a fantastic way to get people engaging in that realm. So, I'm Tony Stoltzfus. I've been in coaching since '99 and written a number of books on it, and done a lot of coach training, ran a coach training school, and I've started a new training institute, and I want to share with you some of the cool out-of-the-box kind of stuff that we do there. So, just real quick, if you have a question or something, type it into the chat box there. If you can't hear me or there's a problem with that, type something in too, and I'll try to pay attention to that. On your right is a file pod. You can download a free book excerpt. It's over under the list of the names of people. So I think we should have the whole crew here, so we'll get going. So where I want to start with this, just learning objectives. Today we're going to talk about how you coach the two different sides of the brain, the emotional and the rational. And I'm going to focus on how you can use the emotional side to coach down to the deep desires that are at the core of what motivate people and what they do. So before we do that, I want to do a real quick review of the heart model. We talked about that in the Coaching Deep Transformation webinar. If you haven't seen that one, there's an on-demand recording you can view. All you have to do is go to the same page where you signed up for this one and log in with your username and password, and it's free there, so you can watch that anytime. So real quick, biblically, the heart is everything that goes on inside of me. My actions biblically are the output of my heart. So out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. The Bible's pretty clear that what you say and do comes out of who you are, this inner part of you. So My actions come from my heart. It's helpful to break down the heart into a couple different levels just to understand the change process. So the top level of this for me is my mind, and by that I mean my thoughts, my feelings, my decisions, what's going on in my head from moment to moment. So that's the mind part of me. Think of it as your conscious mind. And that immediately, I decide to do something and I do it. That's the immediate cause of a lot of my behavior. But the research is that the majority of the stuff that happens in your conscious mind is triggered or generated from your unconscious. And there's this level down there of what I call identity that includes your beliefs, your memories, your wounds, your values. Think of it as this is what life has made me, or this is who I've chosen to become. So the nurture part of me. And this, just a quick by the way, this is a change model of the heart, so it doesn't include, you don't coach someone to change their personality type, so personality type isn't in this model. We're concerned about the things that we can change. So most Christians, when they work at change, they think about an action or a thought pattern they want to change, and they discipline that. And if that doesn't work, maybe they go to the identity level and do some beliefs work or get inner healing. But it's very rare that you see a believer go to the level of desire. And your desire is the underlying motivation, need, love, security, belonging, challenge, significance. It's the stuff that we go after. And very often when we're doing something practical, like let's say in conflict situations I tend to withdraw. That's a desire at work, because my withdrawing is a strategy to give me something that I desire, like comfort or safety or security. If I go out and pursue a dream, and my dream is to build a big church or a big company, I'm doing that because there's a desire underneath that, maybe for significance or recognition. So the big things that we do in life all have a desire under them. And how we work with that desire can cause us to do great things, or it can cause us to do some really screwed up things. But if you don't know what motivates you, you can't change it. So today we're going to focus on how we get down to those underlying motivations. So what I want to do here is, can everyone hear me okay? It's a little question with that. If you can't hear, type something in. Okay, good. So what I want to do here is show a bit of a video, and this is sort of a good picture of the rational and emotional parts of the brain at work. So your job is afterward, tell me who's operating out of the thinking rational side of their heart in this video, who's operating out of the feeling emotional side of their heart, and what do they each need that's different. So here's the video.
It's just, there's all this pressure, And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless, and I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
No, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like there's this achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. All of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Come on, if you would just...
Don't.
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can go on? We can work it out.
I like
We
that.
can work it out.
So think about that in your heart you have this emotional part of you and this rational part of you. Who's functioning out of which side of the brain there, and how's it impacting the conversation? So this is your chance to type. So type in what you think and we'll discuss. And I'm a coach, so I'm professionally trained to sit here and wait quietly until you respond. Here's another question you can answer. What did each of them want? So Pamela says the man was rational, the woman was functioning on the emotional. And that can feel sort of stereotype, but what was the problem that each of them saw? She wanted to be heard, he wanted to fix it. So there's two different desires at work. And sorry, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I'll turn myself down. Um, so the guy is looking at his practical problem. We've got to fixing this. So what the guy sees is here's a practical problem. It has a rational solution. If we just pull this nail out, then the problem will be solved. I want to help you. If it's a good motive, there's nothing wrong with that. But what the gal wanted, this is where the desire stuff comes into play. She was less concerned about the physical problem going away than feeling a sense of connection with her husband. So connection is the desire of her heart. The guy is probably functioning out of the desire to come through or be the hero or fix the problem. So they're functioning out of different desires. They're functioning out of different parts of the brain, and they're getting really different. Their ships passing in the night because they're not understanding each other. So I want to talk for a minute about these two sides of the brain. We'll skip that since we saw it. We actually have there's actually three physical parts of the brain. We have an instinctual brain on the PowerPoint down there at the bottom, which does things like keep our heart beating that we don't, and make our digestive system work that we don't control with our mind, our conscious minds. Then we have an emotional brain, and it's wrapped in rational brain. And those are two different sections of our brain. They have two different sets of cells and neurons. And so when an input comes into your brain, you have these two processes going on in parallel that give you two different things. So depending on which part of your brain you're functioning out of, the same circumstance, the same experience can give you two really different things. And the benefit for this as a coach is, since those two processes are going on all the time, I can make use of them for different things. So if I have a practical problem, like there's a nail in your forehead, I can use my rational side to come up with a solution. If I have a emotion or desire problem that I want to be connected, then I can use that side of my brain to establish connection. So for you as a coach, you'll see both of these different kinds of needs. If you can learn to coach on both sides of the brain, then you can meet them both. So let me give you an example quick of, well, let me go back for a second and talk about characteristics. So your rational brain or your mind it's slower than your emotional brain. So you think about something for a few seconds and then you get a conclusion. Your rational brain is more precise and accurate. So you tend to get better information out of it if you have time to get it. And the language of the rational is words and concepts. Now, emotion is different. Your emotional brain is fast and imprecise. So we've got slow and precise versus fast and imprecise. So your emotional brain can give you a response while your rational brain is still thinking about it. So just to give you a crude example, imagine that I'm talking about a snake. A couple years ago, I was out weed whacking, and all of a sudden this big rattlesnake went right across in front of me. Tried to whack it with the weed whacker, but I missed. We later shot it. But you're out there weed whacking, and this big rattlesnake comes across in front of you, and when you think about a snake, maybe that creates some emotions in you. But all of a sudden, if you see the snake come up like this and then strike, then you get a jolt of emotion. Maybe you jump back. Maybe you experience a little bit of a rush of adrenaline, something like that. But that can happen on a computer screen, on a picture, and you get the same reaction as in you as if it had really happened. That's because your emotional brain responds to that stimulus, that picture, before your rational brain can figure out if that's a real snake or it's just a picture of one. So that's a good example of the two things going on. My emotional brain sees the picture and it says, oh, we've had an experience like this before. It was scary. Therefore, I'm going to give you scary feelings. Boom. And it operates really quickly. Your rational brain looks at it and says, well, that looks scary, but it's on a computer screen. I'm here in my office. In these four walls, there's no snake. I'm safe. But by the time it makes that conclusion, your emotions have already responded. So another important change implication for you as a coach is it's very hard to deal with emotional responses with the rational brain because they happen before the rational brain can even kick in. So, and just to, well, let me go through a process here. There's several reasons to coach the emotional brain instead of the rational brain. So if someone comes to me and says, I want to clean my garage up, and I need to get it done this week, that sounds like a good rational brain thing. There's a clear objective, it's a practical problem, we can come up with a solution. Now, if the same person says, I really need to clean up my garage this week, and it's been a mess for 20 years, and I've been putting it off, and I don't even want to face it. Now, what we're talking about is something that's going on inside of me. I don't want to face it. And that to me is a clue of saying, there's a pattern here. I've tried the normal things. I've tried to make myself do this, but it's not working. So then I, as a coach, say, I need to coach the emotional brain here. I need to find out what's behind that. So coaching the emotional brain, your rational brain filters your heart and your emotional brain doesn't. So that's a big advantage. Your emotional brain gives the best insight about what's going on deep inside of you. And coaching the emotional brain, because it gets deeper in you, has the potential to make these wild transformational changes. So here's an example of, I want to sort of work through with this example the difference between coaching out of the rational and the emotional. So I'm going to work through the process quick here, and then Carissa's going to demo with me, and we're going to show you exactly what that looks like. So let's say, and we'll use a real issue from my past life. Let's say one of your children can never stay in bed at night. They're 3, 4, 5 years old. Every time you put them in bed, 5-10 minutes later, they're wandering out to the living room again. And you're getting really frustrated with this problem. So now you have two options in how you deal with this. If I'm coaching out of the rational brain, which is the top layer of this diagram, what I'm going to start with is the practical problem. My daughter won't stay in her bedroom at night. How do we keep her in her bedroom? We had a son who was even littler that did this, and what we ended up doing was we took the lock set on the door and we flipped it around so that you could lock it from the outside and he couldn't get it open. And then in the morning, he would have crawled out of his crib with his blanket, and he'd be sleeping right in front of the door. It was so cute. Um, but he was Houdini. He could not be kept in his bedroom. But anyway, um, sorry, that was a diversion. So if I'm rational, I start with the practical problem. If I'm emotional, what I do is start with the feeling. So when your daughter comes out and comes out again and comes out again, what goes on inside of you? What emotion do you experience? So our starting place is different. Then the next thing we do is I apply a coaching tool to this. So if I'm coaching in the rational, okay, your daughter comes out a lot. So give me some facts. What happens when she comes out? How long has she been doing this? What have you tried so far? So I'm collecting facts and information about what's going on so that we can analyze it and create a solution. Now the emotional side is interestingly different. What I want to do here, instead of collecting facts, is I want to put you in an experience. So I want you to take this emotion that you had and live in it again and feel it. So what I'll do as a coach is I'll create a scenario, or I'll put you back in the situation you were in. So I might say, so imagine, it's 10 o'clock at night, you're tired, it's been a long day. You put your daughter to bed, you read her the story, you come back out and settle down in front of the TV and say, finally, some free time. And you're 2 minutes into a movie and she walks out again. And you put her in bed and 3 minutes later she's out again. What's going on inside of you in that moment? So what I want to do when I'm coaching the emotional brain is I want you to feel. And the reason for this is when I'm operating in my rational brain, I distance myself from the situation. I put it out here and I analyze it. So I take myself out. When I'm functioning in the emotional brain, I want to put myself in and re-experience it and then work with that. So that's what we're doing here. So once we've re-experienced the feeling, now we have another interesting difference between the rational and the emotional process. With the rational, I use logic. Okay, so it seems like she comes out on the evenings where you have activities or you're away more than on the evenings when it's peaceful. So what could you do to create a peaceful environment to help her wind down? So we took the facts and assembled them into this linear process. Now the way the emotional brain works is not linear and step by step, it works with leaps. So once you're in this feeling, one thing I might do is say, okay, where else have you felt this in life? And your emotional brain will jump to another memory that's behind that. Or I might say, so how do you want to respond to this feeling? Well, I want to withdraw. I want to get away from it. But your emotional brain works with intuitive leaps and jumps. So the reason we're re-experiencing these feelings is so we can activate that ability of your emotional brain to leap. And then our goal at the end is different. With the rational brain, I'm going to come up with a practical action step. So the action step might be, after 7:30, we're only going to do activities with our daughter that are peaceful and help her wind down so she stays in bed. There's a good practical solution. Now, if I'm on the emotional side, and again, this is very interesting, I'm not even dealing with the issue of her, whether or not she comes out of her room. What I'm dealing with is when she comes out of her room at 10 o'clock at night, what does that take from you? And that might be freedom. You might feel, finally, it's 10 at night. This is the one time of the day when I'm not responsible for anything and I can relax, and she's taking that from me, and that's why I get angry. So what we're dealing with is that desire that's underneath the emotion. And the point of this is, very often the practical problem is a function of the operation of the desire. And when I deal with the desire, the practical problem gets less or sometimes even goes away, or at least gets much easier for me to deal with. So we're going to a different place. I want to understand my desire. And then the beauty of this approach that I really like is when you find a desire that's unmet, you were designed to live with your desires filled in your relationship with God. So all we have to do is go to God and fill it, and we can do that in a minute by praying your desire. So our end, instead of a practical action step, is a filled desire. So let me demonstrate what that looks like. Before I do with Carissa, real quick, do you have any questions about this process on the overhead and the difference between coaching in the rational and the emotional? Is there something that's unclear to you, or you'd like me to explain a little further about this model? If you want to come up here while we're... That's a good insight from Lynette. Rational deals with the what and emotional deals with why. That's sort of where we go. Let me back out my camera a little bit so we got more. Yeah. Say hi.
Hi, Lynette.
Were you guys in a team together?
We're in a group right now together,
okay.
yeah.
They're in one of the follow-up teams from an LMI workshop. Can you scoot up just a little bit?
Yeah.
There we go.
Absolutely.
So, this is Carissa. Tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, I am a coach. I'm in training for that and building my business. I moved out to Reading for the School of Ministry about 5 years ago, and yeah, just working on my heart.
Good. So, what I'm going to coach on the graphic and the overhead there, or the PowerPoint, I'm going to coach down the rational side for a little bit, and then the emotion side. So your job is to point out afterward what's the difference between the rational and the emotional questions. And so one thing to pay attention to is the questions. And then the second thing is what's the impact of the conversation and how is that different? Excuse me.
Okay.
My signature giant
Cheers.
mug. So,
Okay.
what do you want to talk about today? And remember to not coach yourself and play dumb.
Okay, I'll play dumb. I won't coach myself. Okay. I have a client who is consistently wanting to change our meetings at the last minute or not showing up or canceling, and that's causing me some anxiety.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about the situation.
So she's a new client, and we're working on kind of getting up and going, and trying to find a consistent time to meet, which seems to be difficult for her to commit to a certain time, and for us to get on the same page about when that will be. So I usually end up trying to be flexible, which is I'm happy to do, except for I'm not sure that's helpful for her, and I'm not sure why it seems so difficult to find a time.
When you say I try to be flexible, what does that mean practically?
It means I usually end up committing to a time that wouldn't be ideal for me, or you know, I've had this time slot set aside for us, and then that changes, so it just practically looks like that's always changing, and so the time that I set aside for it isn't actually used for that.
Yeah.
Kind of.
So what do you want it to look like? What's the objective?
Well, what I would like is for some consistency, and there's a few things that would be helpful in my schedule to know what to expect, but I also feel like for coaching her, we haven't actually gotten any traction, and I don't know if she's actually had an experience that's reflective of the potential for coaching, because it keeps changing and getting put off and stuff like that. Okay. So I would like consistency for both of those reasons, to be effective and feel yeah.
So what if you were gonna take an action to get that working right and working the way you want it to, what would that action look like? Or could that action look like?
What would that? Well, I've taken a few actions already, like I suggested a scheduling tool for us to use that would allow me to give her some options for the week, and so that's one kind of action I've taken, effort to give her some options, but also ask for a commitment. I think, yeah.
And if you were gonna, you've done a few things. If you were gonna take another step, what would it be?
I guess just another conversation.
Do you want to have another conversation?
Well, I mean, I think it's an ongoing conversation, but I guess I need to know from. I'm just not sure what's going to be helpful for everyone. So.
Okay. Now, just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to stop there and not complete the conversation, but I think you're getting the flavor of what it looks like to coach out of the rational. Because this is the kind of thing we've been trained to do. So let me take it down the emotional track and watch how this is different. So take the last time she didn't show up, or the last time you had to reschedule.
Okay.
Tell me just give me the circumstances real quick.
I sent.
I mean, for you,
yeah.
Circumstances.
For me, so I sent this tool out to her, listing, I think 4 or 5 options for the week, and she messaged back saying, "I really like the tool. These are the only times I can meet," which neither of which were on the options I gave her. So, so then I start feeling anxious and like a lot of tension inside.
Okay. So put yourself back in that moment.
Okay.
You're starting to feel anxious.
Yeah.
And tense about it.
It's not that hard to get there.
And just take the emotion cards and see if you can name the feeling and describe it a little bit.
Okay.
And she's using, just give me one of them.
Yeah.
So these are the emotion cards, part of the desire discovery card package, but there's 8 positive emotions and 8 negative ones, and it really helps people talk about what they feel.
Yeah.
So pick a card.
Any card. Okay. I picked the afraid card because on there it has stressed, anxious, and those are definitely feelings that I have. And then I think there's maybe something about like threatened on there too, because I have this like feeling of I don't have any good options here. So kind of stuck.
Now, is that a trap, powerless type of feeling, or is it a unsafe feeling, or what?
I think it's, well, it doesn't feel safe, but I think it is maybe a little bit more trapped and powerless, because I kind of feel like I don't have a good choice. I just have a couple bad choices.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you were comparing the two, the fear, anxiety, and the powerless, I don't have good choices, which is strongest for you of those two feelings?
I don't know. They kind of feel really connected.
Okay. Well, let's start with the afraid one.
Okay.
When you're feeling that afraidness, what are you afraid will happen? What's the bad outcome that makes you anxious?
Well, I guess I feel like if I guess I'm afraid of anger from her, or disconnection, and I
So you're afraid she'll do something. She'll get angry or disconnect or
that I'll be wrong no matter
Okay.
what.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So if all right, so take that feeling of I'm afraid of disconnection or being wrong or whatever. What's your first kind of response to that feeling? What do you do with it? Not how do you deal with it, but do you want to run away? Do you want to fight? Do you want to cry on someone's shoulder? What's
all
the
of
thing
the
that you
above.
want to do?
Yeah.
Do you want to try to fix it?
Yeah, I want to try to fix it, but I think I think I go towards the direction of blaming, of looking for like why she's wrong and why I need to stand up for myself. That kind of
Okay.
um
Okay. Now,
yeah.
when people experience a strong emotion, there'll be a sort of instinctual response to that, and that response represents um, it's my safety button. It's my protective mechanism. So that response is meant to give me the thing I really want in this situation. So we're going to go down that path and look for what you really want. So when you feel like the urge to blame her, to feel like I'm okay, what does that give you? If she was to blame, what does that give you?
I guess it makes me okay. So there's something seems like there's something that keeps me safe in that if I'm
Okay. You're coaching yourself now.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
When you do demos with another coach, you have to be careful. I coach itself.
Okay.
So, and if you're not to blame, if you're okay, what does that give you?
I guess safety. I guess it feels like
Okay.
it makes me safe.
Okay. And if you're safe, what does that give you? Is there anything under that, or does that feel like the bottom?
Well, I mean, I guess if I'm safe, then I don't have to be afraid. Maybe something about.
Okay. And if you don't have to be afraid, what does that give you?
I guess it gives me peace. If I don't have to be afraid, then I can be at peace.
Okay. And if you're at peace, what does that give you?
A better life.
Are the peace and safety sort of the same thing there, or are they different?
I think they're similar. They go together. When I feel safe, I feel at peace, and
Okay. So ultimately, if you're not to blame, you're at peace, and if she upsets the relationship, it takes your peace away, and that's scary. Does that sound true down here to you?
and
And feel free to change it if it doesn't.
yeah. I was just thinking about the language of if she upsets the relationship, then it takes my peace away.
Or to fill out the chain, if she upsets the relationship, I feel to blame.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with me. It takes my peace away. It takes my safety away.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's something in there about being afraid that I'll upset the relationship too. So it's kind of both.
Okay.
If she does that, or if I think that I might do something that will. Yeah.
Okay. So there's probably, just a note, there's probably a couple desires here at work. One of them having to do with doing well, doing it right, not messing up. and the other one having to do with the peace and safety thing. So I'm going to just pursue the peace and safety thing.
Okay.
So, and we're down here, we've identified a core desire that's motivating her behavior. And if I can make a comment, because of what you'll lose if the relationship gets upset, you're afraid to tell her what you need to tell her, which is,
Yeah.
you know, you're telling me that you don't want this. And if you don't, that's fine, but hey, I'm not going to keep.
Yeah.
So the
Totally.
unmet desire keeps you from doing the practical thing you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do here's the fun part where we fill the desire. So,
let's have some fun.
so here's an interesting prayer.
Okay.
And feel free to modify this if it doesn't work for you, but
Okay.
something like, Jesus, how will you give me peace even if she disconnects?
Okay. Jesus, how will you give me peace even if she disconnects? I guess I saw this picture that of Jesus and I in this hammock, which I've seen that picture before, but and of like inviting her to join us, but realizing even if she doesn't, we'll still be there together.
So how does that impact you to see that picture? That you still got somebody in the hammock with you?
Yeah. And I guess, yeah, I guess there's something about that I can't really mess it up. It's just an invitation to her into peace, I guess. So
That would be another interesting question. Jesus, is there anything I can do to mess up you and me in the
yeah. Should I ask him that?
Yeah, sure. See what he says.
Jesus, is there anything I can do to mess up you and I in being in the hammock? Well, I mean, I guess he said I could get out, but unless I choose to get out, we'll be there together.
So he's in no matter what.
Yeah.
And the only way you could get rid of him was to get out yourself.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
How does that impact you?
I mean, it feels good. I'm like, I never want to get out.
Okay. So let's try something interesting here. So go back to this. If you're gonna, now that we've had this experience, if you're gonna go back and have this conversation with her,
yeah,
does it feel any different? And what would you do if you're still in the hammock? You can't get Jesus out of it.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's just it's a good visual for me. I think going back to that conversation, what I would do is just picture inviting her into the hammock with us, and then ask Jesus for help with the language of how to do that and for that situation at that time, but like being in that place and starting from there.
Yeah, so here's my hammock if you want in.
Yeah.
This is what it means.
Yeah.
Does that feel like standing up for yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm still trying to get a sense of that. It feels peaceful. It feels like. So, um, so I think from that place, I'll know how to take care of both myself and
Okay.
her.
Okay. Good. Now here, just note on the coaching thing, it might be helpful to go back and sort of walk through the conversation on the rational side. Okay, what do you need to say? How are you going to say it? Do the practical thing. But the reason that hasn't happened so far is because of the desire obstacle that if I have this conversation, I'm going to lose peace and it's going to feel wrong. And therefore, there's a high cost to this conversation. So by doing this, we take a lot of the cost away. And then it's much easier to engage the practical solution. So, do you want to respond to that at all?
Yeah, I think that's really true, and I do
Okay.
feel that. It feels like so much anxiety, but it doesn't have to be that.
So it feels less anxiety now. Okay,
Mhm.
good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
That's cool.
And thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Bye, Lynette.
So, again, the point of this from the coaching conversation is what's locking her up is on the emotional side. Once we deal with that, then the practical comes easy. If we try to ram through the practical without dealing with the emotional, we're fighting this thing inside of me that has a lot of energy with it. And that's really hard work. So this makes change easier. So let me give you a chance to type here. What were the differences between the questions in those two coaching conversations? What questions are you asking if you want to have a rational conversation, and what questions are you asking if you want to have an emotion conversation? So go ahead and type, and we'll debrief on what you type in. While you're typing, I always love to say I get paid the same when they're talking to Jesus as they do to me. So, less work for me, same income. Oh, shoot. They're just things that Jesus can do for my clients that I can't. And if I can figure out how to let him do it, I look like a genius and they get what they need. Mindy, can you get the difference between the questions, but how do we learn? Can you flesh that question out a little bit or make it more specific for me so I can answer that? Patty, rational, what do you want to do? Emotional is about experience. Yes. So when I'm in the rational, I'm asking doing questions. That's one characteristic. When I'm emotional, I'm asking about experience, and I'm trying to draw people into experience. So let's see what others of you say. Lynette, asking her if she had felt that before. Usually when I'm working with emotion, because emotion is an experience, I try to stick with one experience. Like sometimes what will happen is there's a big difference between saying, how did you feel in this situation, and how do you feel in these situations? Because when I ask for these situations, people get into summary and analysis, and they're standing at a distance from the situation. Whereas if I say, how do you feel in this situation, the specific is much easier to engage the emotional brain with. So when I'm asking emotion questions, usually I want a specific experience so that they can live in it and re-experience it. So let me pick up some of these other. Rational is logical, tends to lead to practical action, yes. Emotion is more about the whys, it's about the feelings. The emotion part is seeing what drives our feelings. So yeah, rational is going to be what can you do, what did you do, what could you do, what have you done. it's also going to be very oriented toward the external, the action, the future. When I'm in the emotional, I'm thinking about experiencing something, feeling it, and then what does that connect me to? Good. Emotional went to her heart's desire. So um, what what do you feel was the benefit there of going down the emotional side? What did that give Carissa? And while you're typing, one of the challenges in doing this is often you'll ask an emotion question and you'll get a rational response. So how did you feel in that situation? And the person starts to describe the situation. Well, I sort of felt, well, it was a, it was a long day. I mean, I had 3 meetings before that, and see, now they're just giving you facts. Or another thing that you'll see people do is they'll talk about their feelings from a distance. So, yeah, when I was in that situation, I sort of felt afraid, and it's somewhat like other times I've felt afraid, but this time, just no, not nearly as bad, because did you see what they're doing? They're standing at a distance and analyzing their feelings instead of being in them. So let me come back to some of your comments here. I took her answer and incorporated it into another question that took her deeper. Yeah, I'm following the process of what did you feel? Okay, now create a scenario so you enter that feeling and experience it. Once you're experiencing it, okay, how did you want to respond to the emotion? And then with the response, then I use what I call the desire questions. There's 2 of them. One of them is, what does that give you? The other one is, what do you fear losing if you didn't do that? So we're taking how you wanted to act. I wanted to try to fix it, to try to make it work. Well, if you could make it work, what does that give you? Or if you can't make it work, what are you afraid will happen? So the desire questions ask about the 2 sides of the coin. If I do this, what will it give me that I want? If I don't do this, what will I lose that I want? So that's sort of the key question of that conversation is, what will that give you? Yeah, the emotional conversation, it gave her understanding of what was going on in her. There's a difference. Wendy says it helped her feel better about the situation, and it did. But there's 2 things going on here. There's the immediate feeling, which is up at the mind level. But then there's also the sense where I know something in my head, but I don't know it in my heart. That's a deeper kind of knowing. So what we're doing by having God speak to them and having the experience of God speaking to them is that's how you get knowing here. So something impacts you in the identity and the desire realm, and then your feelings change as that percolates up through you. So what I'm not trying to do is say, think happy thoughts right now and you'll feel better, which is just up here at the level of mind, thoughts, decisions, feelings. What I'm trying to do is say, if we touch this reality of your desire and it gets filled, changed emotion will come out of that. So hopefully if you don't understand that, feel free and ask me. But there's a big difference between filling my desire, which creates positive emotions, versus just trying to create positive emotions. So, and the whole process thing of how questions I ask. If I've not answered that question yet, feel free and push me out some more on that. I'm going to do just a little quick wrap up here, and then I'll stick around for a bit. So if you want to ask some more questions or chat with me, feel free and stick around. The book Questions for Jesus is a whole book about this concept of praying your desire and filling desire. So it looks at every place in Matthew where Jesus touches someone's deep desire, and then it gives you 5 desire prayers you can pray around. So this kind of thing has revolutionized my prayer life and is revolutionary for a lot of other people too, of just being able to talk to Jesus with your emotional brain. So that resource is on the coach22.com/webinar page. If you're interested in training, www.meta-formation.com is where we have the training courses. Transforming the Heart, Relating from the Heart, Living from the Heart. Fantastic experience if you could come join us for one of those. We also have, there's another webinar in this series coming up. There's still slots open for that, so if you want to sign up. And if you didn't see the first webinar, Coaching Deep Transformation, there's a recording online. So if you just go back to where you originally signed up for this webinar, which is meta-formation.com/catalog.html, if you don't have the URL. If you go back to that, you'll see the first item on there is the recorded webinar, and all you have to do is log in with your username and password, and you can watch it. So if you want to see it again or you haven't seen it, go for it. So I'm going to go ahead and close the formal webinar here and shut off the recording. And if you want to stick around, you want to answer some of these questions and take things a little farther. So thanks for joining me.